The lighting is all wrong. How am I supposed to make these people look good when they insist on sitting like gargoyles? Miss, could you please stop adjusting your wig? It's already moved 3 inches to the left.
I'm not wearing a wig, you incompetent fool. This is my natural hair after a very expensive treatment at the most exclusive salon in Manhattan.
Well, that explains the unusual texture. Should I blur it in post-production? Maybe add some digital enhancement to make it look more natural?
How dare you? Do you know who I am? I'm the CEO of Stellar Entertainment. I could have you blacklisted from every studio in the city, state, and probably the entire entertainment industry.
The CEO who's about to be exposed on national television for kidnapping and embezzlement. Should I use the soft focus filter to hide the guilt in your eyes, or the harsh reality setting to show every detail of your impending doom?
You impertinent little man. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive. I know every producer, every director, every network executive from here to Los Angeles.
That's fascinating, ma'am. I'm sure that impressive network will be very helpful when you're making license plates in federal prison. Now, could you please sit still? The camera doesn't lie, but can at least be steady while capturing your downfall.
I demand to speak to your supervisor immediately. This is completely unprofessional behavior.
My supervisor is currently taking bets on how long it'll take for the FBI to arrest you after this broadcast. I think he put $20 on under 5 minutes. Should I tell him you'd like to place a wager?
This is outrageous. When my lawyers hear about this treatment, they'll sue this entire network for defamation and harassment.
Your lawyers? You mean the ones who quit yesterday when they found out the FBI froze all your assets? Yeah. Good luck with that lawsuit. Maybe you can represent yourself. I hear prison libraries have excellent legal resources.
You're lying. My legal team would never abandon me in my hour of need.
Ma'am, your hour of need was apparently 3 years ago when you decided to kidnap your stepdaughter. Right now, this is your hour of reckoning, and it's being broadcast live to millions of viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live in 30 seconds. This is Channel 7's most anticipated expose of the year. Tonight, we reveal the truth behind the mysterious disappearance and shocking return of heiress Melody Winters. I want everyone to understand the magnitude of what we're about to broadcast to the nation. There's nothing mysterious about it. That ungrateful girl ran away because she couldn't handle real responsibility. Now she's back with some ridiculous story about being held against her will, probably coached by expensive lawyers who smell a big payday. Mrs. Winters, I need to remind you that everything you say from this moment forward is being recorded and broadcast live to millions of viewers. You might want to choose your words more carefully, especially considering the legal implications. I don't need to choose my words carefully, because I'm telling the truth. Melody has always been dramatic and manipulative. She's probably been planning this elaborate revenge fantasy for years, just waiting for the right moment to destroy our family. That's a very serious accusation. Are you suggesting that your stepdaughter orchestrated her own kidnapping and held herself prisoner for 3 years just to frame you and your son? I'm suggesting that she's capable of anything to get attention and control. She never accepted that her father remarried, and she never accepted that Lance and I became part of the family business leadership structure. So your theory is that she spent 3 years in hiding, built a billion-dollar corporation, gathered extensive evidence of financial crimes, and coordinated with federal law enforcement agencies, all just to get attention? That seems like an extraordinarily complicated plan for someone seeking attention. Money can buy anything, including fake evidence and false testimony. When you have unlimited resources, you can create whatever narrative you want and pay people to support it. Mrs. Winters, are you aware that the evidence against you includes your own voice on recorded conversations discussing your stepdaughter's imprisonment and your plans to permanently silence her? Those recordings are taken completely out of context. We were discussing hypothetical scenarios and potential problems. Business leaders often engage in strategic planning that involves considering extreme circumstances. Extreme circumstances like murder? Because that's what you discussed on those recordings. You and your son Lance can be heard planning to kill your stepdaughter and dispose of her body. We were brainstorming. In the entertainment industry, we're always developing scripts and storylines that involve dramatic scenarios. Those conversations were creative exercises, not criminal conspiracies. Mrs. Winters, this is live television and millions of people are watching. Are you seriously claiming that planning to murder your stepdaughter was a creative exercise for the entertainment industry? I'm claiming that creative people often discuss dark scenarios as part of their professional development. Writers and producers frequently explore themes of crime and violence in their work. So you're saying you're a writer or producer? Because according to your own company's records, you're the chief executive officer responsible for business operations, not creative development. A good CEO understands all aspects of the business, including the creative side. I've been involved in numerous projects that required me to understand storytelling and dramatic structure. What projects? Can you name a single film, television show, or other creative work that you've been involved with during your time as CEO of Stellar Entertainment? There have been many projects, too many to list in a television interview. Our company has an extensive portfolio of creative endeavors and business partnerships throughout the entertainment industry. Mrs. Winters, according to the financial records that will be presented as evidence tonight, Stellar Entertainment has never produced a single piece of creative content. Your company's sole purpose appears to be laundering money stolen from your late husband's legitimate business. That's completely false. We've invested in numerous creative projects and business ventures. Just because the returns haven't materialized yet doesn't mean the investments weren't legitimate. What returns were you expecting from holding your stepdaughter prisoner in Montana? What was the business model there? How does kidnapping generate investment returns? We weren't holding anyone prisoner. The Montana facility was a legitimate business investment with multiple potential revenue streams and development opportunities. What kind of development opportunities require basement prison cells and armed guards? Because those are the facilities that federal agents discovered when they raided the property. Those weren't prison cells. They were secure storage areas for valuable equipment and important documents. The security was necessary to protect our investments from theft and vandalism. Mrs. Winters, are you seriously telling our viewers that you installed toilets and beds in secure storage areas for equipment and documents? Because that's what the FBI found in those basement rooms. The facilities were multi-purpose. They could be used for storage, but they were also designed to accommodate security personnel and maintenance workers who needed to stay on the property overnight. Security personnel and maintenance workers who needed to be locked in from the outside, because that's how the FBI found the rooms configured when they raided the facility. That's a standard security protocol. When you're protecting valuable assets, you need multiple layers of protection to prevent unauthorized access and ensure the safety of everyone on the property. Mrs. Winters, I need to ask you directly. Do you understand that you're confessing to multiple felonies on live television right now? Because everything you're saying is making your legal situation significantly worse. I'm not confessing to anything. I'm explaining legitimate business decisions that are being mischaracterized by people who don't understand the complexities of our industry and the challenges we face in protecting our investments. The challenges of protecting your investments from your own stepdaughter? The person who had a legal right to those assets as her father's heir? Melody had no experience in business. She was young and naive and easily influenced by people who didn't have her best interests at heart. We were protecting her inheritance from predators who wanted to manipulate her. Predators like yourselves? Because according to the evidence that will be presented tonight, you and your son were systematically stealing millions of dollars from her inheritance while she was imprisoned. We were managing the assets professionally. Someone had to make difficult financial decisions to preserve the value of the company during a period of transition and uncertainty. Transition and uncertainty that you created by kidnapping the rightful heir and stealing her money? That seems like a self-created problem rather than a legitimate business challenge. The business challenges were real regardless of where Melody was. The economy was unstable, competitors were aggressive, and we had to take decisive action to protect everyone's interests. Everyone's interests, or just your own financial interests? because the evidence shows that you and Lance were the only ones benefiting from these supposed protective measures. We sacrificed everything for that company. We worked day and night to preserve what Melody's father built. We deserve compensation for our efforts and dedication to the family legacy. You deserve compensation for kidnapping and theft. That's an interesting interpretation of employment law. I don't think most people would consider those job duties worthy of compensation. You're twisting everything. We're the victims here. We've been vilified and persecuted for making difficult decisions under impossible circumstances. Mrs. Winters, in what universe are kidnappers and thieves considered victims? Your stepdaughter is the victim. She's the one who was imprisoned against her will and robbed of her inheritance. Melody is a master manipulator who's convinced everyone that she's innocent. She's probably been planning this revenge scheme for years, just waiting for the right opportunity to destroy us. If she's such a master manipulator, how did you manage to kidnap and imprison her for 3 years? Wouldn't a master manipulator be able to prevent that from happening? She was young and inexperienced then. She's obviously learned a lot during her time away and gotten help from very sophisticated people who specialize in this kind of character assassination. Character assassination? Mrs. Winters, character assassination involves making false accusations. What we're doing tonight is revealing true facts about crimes that actually occurred. There's a significant difference. The facts are being presented out of context and without proper explanation. Complex business and family situations can't be reduced to simple criminal narratives for television consumption. What additional context would make kidnapping and theft acceptable? I'm genuinely curious what circumstances you think justify holding a family member prisoner and stealing their money. We were trying to save the family. We were trying to preserve everything that Melody's father worked for. Sometimes desperate situations require desperate measures. Desperate situations that you created through your own criminal behavior? That's like an arsonist claiming they had to burn down a house to save it from a fire they started themselves.
Keep your voice down, Wendy. The cameras aren't rolling yet, but the microphones are always hot in these studios. We need to be very careful about what we say, especially with all the legal implications surrounding the situation.
Don't tell me what to do, Lance. You're just as guilty as the rest of us. If anyone should be worried, it's you. After all, you were the one who came up with the brilliant idea of using that Montana facility in the first place.
I have nothing to hide. Unlike some people, I've kept my hands clean throughout this entire ordeal. Everything I did was within the bounds of protecting our family's interests and maintaining the integrity of our business operations.
Protecting our family interests? Is that what you call holding your stepsister prisoner in a basement for 3 years? Because last time I checked, that's called kidnapping, which carries a pretty hefty prison sentence in most states.
We were protecting her from herself. She was making dangerous accusations that could have destroyed everything our father built. Sometimes drastic measures are necessary to preserve the greater good of the family legacy.
Oh, please, spare me the noble family legacy speech. You were just as eager as I was to get her out of the way so we could continue our business arrangements without interference from her constant questioning and investigation.
My motivations were pure, Wendy. I genuinely believed we were doing what was best for everyone involved. You, on the other hand, were motivated purely by greed and your desire to maintain control of the company assets.
Motivated by greed? You're the one who suggested we increase our monthly withdrawals from the shell accounts. You're the one who wanted to buy that ridiculous yacht with the stolen money.
That yacht was a business expense. We needed it for client entertainment and corporate retreats. It was a legitimate investment in our company's future growth and development strategies.
Business expense? The only business conducted on that yacht was planning how to keep Melody locked away and figuring out new ways to steal money from the company accounts without getting caught by auditors.
You're exaggerating the situation, Wendy. Our financial arrangements were complex, but perfectly legal under the right interpretation of corporate law. We had every right to those funds as senior executives of the company.
Senior executives? Lance, you were the vice president of a company that belonged to your father and stepsister. You had no more right to that money than the janitor who cleaned the offices every night.
I dedicated my entire life to that company. I worked 18-hour days to build it into what it became. I deserve compensation for my efforts and my unwavering commitment to its success and growth.
You worked 18-hour days figuring out how to embezzle money more efficiently. The only thing you built was an elaborate criminal enterprise designed to steal from your own family.
That's not true. I made legitimate business decisions that happened to benefit our personal financial situations. There's nothing criminal about taking advantage of legal loopholes and corporate tax strategies.
Legal loopholes? Lance, you created fake companies to hide stolen money. You forged contracts to justify fraudulent payments. You held your stepsister prisoner to prevent her from exposing your crimes.
The companies weren't fake. They provided real services to real clients. The fact that we happen to own them doesn't make the transactions illegitimate or criminal in nature.
What services, Lance? What clients? The only service those companies provided was laundering stolen money, and the only clients were us using different names to hide our identities from investigators.
You're oversimplifying a complex financial structure that was designed to maximize tax efficiency and minimize corporate liability exposure. These are standard business practices in the modern economy.
Standard business practices don't include basement prisons, Lance. Standard business practices don't include threatening to murder family members who ask too many questions about missing money.
We never threatened to murder anyone. We simply discussed various options for dealing with a difficult situation that threatened to destroy everything we had worked so hard to build and maintain.
Various options? You mean like the conversation where you said we should make her disappear permanently and make it look like an accident? Because that sounds exactly like a murder threat to me.
That conversation was taken completely out of context. We were brainstorming solutions to a complex problem, and sometimes brainstorming involves discussing extreme scenarios that you would never actually implement.
Extreme scenarios? You hired someone to dig a grave, Lance. You can't brainstorm your way out of that level of premeditation. That's evidence of conspiracy to commit murder.
The grave was for a different project entirely. We were considering various land development options for the Montana property, and excavation was part of the preliminary site preparation process.
Land development? In the middle of nowhere, Montana? What were you planning to develop? A cemetery for inconvenient family members? Because that's the only development that makes sense with a single grave in the woods.
You're being deliberately obtuse, Wendy. The property had multiple potential uses, and we were exploring all of them to maximize our investment return and minimize our financial exposure to market fluctuations.
Multiple potential uses like hiding kidnapped family members and burying evidence of your crimes? Because those seem to be the only uses you actually implemented during your ownership of the property.
This conversation is pointless. You're determined to paint everything in the worst possible light instead of recognizing the complex business realities that forced us to make difficult decisions under extreme circumstances.
Complex business realities? The only reality here is that we're about to be arrested on live television for kidnapping, embezzlement, and attempted murder. There's nothing complex about that.
If you hadn't been so careless with the financial records, none of this would have happened. Melody never would have discovered the irregularities if you had been more careful about covering our tracks.
So now it's my fault that your stepsister is smart enough to read financial statements and notice when millions of dollars go missing from company accounts? How was I supposed to hide that level of theft?
You could have been more creative with the accounting. You could have spread the withdrawals over longer periods. You could have used more legitimate-sounding business expenses to justify the transfers.
More creative? Lance, I created an entire network of shell companies with fake business plans and fraudulent contracts. How much more creative did you expect me to be?
You should have anticipated that someone might eventually investigate the connections between the companies. You should have built in more layers of protection to prevent discovery.
I'm not a criminal mastermind, Lance. I'm a businesswoman who got in over her head trying to help you steal money from your own father's company. I did the best I could with limited resources.
Limited resources? You had access to the best accountants and lawyers money could buy. You could have consulted with experts on how to structure these transactions more securely.
Consulted with experts on how to steal money more efficiently? Do you realize how insane that sounds? Professionals don't help people commit crimes, Lance. They report suspicious activity to the authorities.
There are ways to structure complex financial transactions that are perfectly legal but appear questionable to outside observers. We could have used those techniques to achieve our goals without crossing any legal lines.
We crossed every legal line imaginable the moment we decided to steal money from the company. There's no legal way to embezzle funds, Lance. The word embezzle literally means theft by someone in a position of trust.
5 seconds. People, try to look less guilty. It's not a good look for primetime television. Although honestly, the guilty look is probably more honest than whatever fake, innocent expressions you might try to put on for the cameras.
We are innocent. This is all a carefully orchestrated conspiracy designed to destroy our reputations and steal our life's work. When the truth comes out, everyone involved in this charade will face serious consequences.
Ma'am, the truth is coming out. That's literally what this broadcast is for. We're revealing the truth about what you did to your stepdaughter and how you stole millions of dollars from your family's company. You don't understand the full situation. There are complexities here that can't be explained in a simple television interview. The media always oversimplifies complicated business and family dynamics. Complicated? Let me see if I can simplify it for you. You stole money, kidnapped your sister, held her prisoner for 3 years, and planned to kill her to cover up your crimes. Did I miss any important complexities there?
You're reducing a complex family situation to a simple crime story. There were years of built-up resentment and legitimate business disagreements that led to these unfortunate circumstances.
Unfortunate circumstances? That's what you're calling kidnapping and attempted murder? I'd hate to see what you consider fortunate circumstances. Probably involves actual murder and better hiding places for the bodies. This is exactly the kind of sensationalism that destroys families and ruins innocent people's lives. You're taking isolated incidents and weaving them into a false narrative of criminal conspiracy. Isolated incidents? Sir, holding someone prisoner for 3 years isn't an isolated incident. That's a sustained criminal enterprise that required planning, resources, and ongoing commitment to keeping your victim locked away.
We were trying to protect her. She was making wild accusations that could have destroyed the company and put hundreds of employees out of work. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made for the greater good.
Protect her? From what exactly? From discovering that you were stealing her inheritance? From exposing your crimes to the authorities? Because those are the only things she needed protection from, and you were the ones threatening her. You don't know what it's like to be responsible for so many people's livelihoods. When the survival of the company is at stake, extraordinary measures sometimes become necessary to preserve everyone's interests. Extraordinary measures like kidnapping and theft. I'm pretty sure there are business schools that teach conflict resolution and crisis management without resorting to felony charges. You might want to look into those courses during your prison sentence.
Prison sentence? We haven't been convicted of anything. In America, people are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This television trial is meaningless from a legal perspective.
You're absolutely right about the legal system, ma'am. That's why the FBI has spent months gathering evidence and building an airtight case against you. This television broadcast is just the public revelation of what the authorities already know and can prove. Evidence can be fabricated. Testimony can be coerced. The FBI makes mistakes all the time when they're under pressure to solve high-profile cases. They probably rush to judgment to get positive media coverage. Sir, your own girlfriend gathered most of the evidence against you. Are you suggesting the FBI coerced her into secretly recording your conversations and documenting your criminal activities for 8 months?
That little traitor was probably working with the authorities from the beginning. This whole thing was a setup designed to trick us into incriminating ourselves.
Actually, ma'am, you've been incriminating yourselves quite effectively without any help from anyone else. Every word you've spoken since arriving at the studio has made your legal situation worse. We agreed to come here to set the record straight and defend our reputations. We thought this would be an opportunity to present our side of the story to the American people. Your side of the story is that you kidnapped your sister and stole millions of dollars. But you had good reasons for doing it? Because that's basically what you've been telling me for the past 20 minutes.
We've been explaining the complex circumstances that led to these misunderstandings. Context is important when evaluating people's actions and motivations.
The context is that you're greedy criminals who destroyed your own family for money. I think most people can understand that context pretty easily without needing a detailed explanation of your thought process. You're being deliberately inflammatory. We're trying to have a reasonable discussion about complicated family and business issues, and you're turning it into a sensationalized crime drama. Sir, you turned it into a crime drama when you decided to commit actual crimes. I'm just documenting the drama that you created through your own choices and actions.
When this is over and we're vindicated, I'm going to make sure you never work in television again. Your unprofessional behavior and biased reporting will be exposed for what it really is.
Ma'am, when this is over, you'll be in federal prison and I'll be winning journalism awards for documenting the downfall of one of the most corrupt families in American business history. I think I'll take my chances with the career outcome. You think this is funny? You think destroying people's lives and families is entertainment? What kind of person finds joy in other people's suffering and legal troubles? The kind of person who believes that criminals should face consequences for their actions, and that victims deserve justice for the terrible things that were done to them. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that's a pretty reasonable position.
Melody was never a victim. She was a spoiled brat who couldn't handle adult responsibilities. Everything we did was to help her grow up and understand the real world.
You helped her understand the real world by locking her in a basement for 3 years? That's a very interesting educational philosophy. I'm sure child development experts will be fascinated by your teaching methods. She wasn't locked in a basement. The facility had multiple rooms and amenities. She was provided with food, clothing, and entertainment during her stay. Her stay? Sir, you're talking about kidnapping like she was a guest at a resort. The fact that you gave her food doesn't make imprisonment legal or moral.
We were trying to give her time to think about her accusations and understand how damaging they could be to the family business and everyone who depended on it for their livelihoods.
Time to think. 3 years. That's not contemplation. That's imprisonment. And the only thing she was thinking about during that time was how to escape and get justice for what you did to her. Justice? She's the one who's destroying our family. She's the one who's tearing apart everything our father built. She's the one who's putting innocent people out of work. Your father built a legitimate business that you destroyed through theft and corruption. She's not tearing anything apart. She's exposing the damage you already caused through your criminal activities.
Good evening, America. I'm Jennifer Walsh, and tonight we bring you an extraordinary story of survival, betrayal, and ultimate triumph. 3 years ago, Melody Winters, heiress to the Winters fortune, vanished without a trace. Her family claimed she had run away after a heated disagreement about her inheritance. But tonight, the truth comes to light in what may be the most shocking revelation in television history. Joining us are Melody's stepmother, Wendy Winters, CEO of Stellar Entertainment, her stepbrother Lance Winters, VP of Operations, and for the first time in 3 years, Melody Winters herself, now revealed to be the secret owner of Phoenix Global Industries, one of the world's largest conglomerates. We also have with us Ashley Martinez, Lance's former girlfriend who played a crucial role in gathering evidence for this case. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. I want to say from the start that what I witnessed over the past year has completely changed my understanding of what family should mean and how people should treat each other. Ashley, before we get into the details, can you tell our viewers how you became involved in this situation? I met Lance about 2 years ago at a business conference. He seemed charming and successful, and when he asked me to help him manage a family property in Montana, I thought it would be a good opportunity to advance my career in property management.
Ashley, please don't do this. You know there were legitimate reasons for everything that happened. You understand the business pressures we were under and the difficult decisions we had to make.
Lance, there's no legitimate reason for what you did to Melody. There's no business pressure that justifies keeping someone locked in a basement against their will. I've had a year to think about this, and I know the difference between right and wrong.
You're oversimplifying a complex situation. You don't understand all the factors that led to these circumstances. There were legal issues, family dynamics, and business considerations that required careful management.
Careful management? Is that what you call threatening to kill someone? Because I have recordings of you discussing exactly how you planned to murder your stepsister and dispose of her body. Ashley, when did you first realize that something wasn't right about the Montana facility? It took me about 3 months to figure out what was really going on. At first, Lance told me that Melody was staying there voluntarily because she was having emotional problems and needed a safe place to recover from family trauma. That's exactly what was happening. Melody was unstable and needed professional help. We were providing her with a secure environment where she could get the treatment she needed without media attention. Treatment? There were no medical professionals at the facility. There was no therapy or counseling. There was just Lance visiting once a month to threaten her and make sure she was still too scared to try to escape.
We were protecting her privacy. Mental health treatment is very personal, and we wanted to make sure she could recover without public scrutiny or media interference.
Lance, she was locked in a room with bars on the windows and guards outside the door. That's not mental health treatment. That's imprisonment. And you know it because you're the one who installed the locks and hired the guards. Ashley, what made you finally realize the truth about what was happening? I overheard a phone conversation between Lance and Wendy where they were discussing how long they could keep her there without anyone getting suspicious. Lance said they might need to consider a permanent solution if she didn't stop causing problems. You misunderstood that conversation. We were discussing long-term care options for someone with serious mental health issues. Sometimes people need extended treatment programs that last months or even years. Extended treatment programs don't include discussions about digging graves and making deaths look accidental. I know what I heard, and I know what it meant because Lance explained it to me later in detail.
Ashley, you're taking isolated comments out of context and creating a false narrative. People say things when they're frustrated that they don't really mean.
For 6 months, Lance. You discussed killing your stepsister for 6 months. That's not frustration talking. That's premeditated murder planning. I have hours of recordings documenting your conversations. Wendy, How do you respond to these accusations from someone who is intimately involved in your operations and witnessed your behavior firsthand? Ashley is a disgruntled employee who's been influenced by Melody's lawyers and probably offered money to testify against us. She's not a reliable witness because she has financial incentives to lie. Financial incentives? I've received nothing except cooperation from law enforcement in exchange for my testimony. I came forward because I couldn't live with myself knowing that I had participated in kidnapping and attempted murder. You participated because you were paid. We have records of every salary payment and bonus we gave you during your employment. You were well compensated for your services. I was paid to manage a property. I wasn't paid to guard a prisoner or help plan a murder. When I realized what was really happening, I stopped taking your money and started working with the FBI instead.
The FBI probably offered you immunity from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation. You're not a hero, Ashley. You're saving yourself from criminal charges.
I am saving myself from criminal charges because I realized I was participating in serious crimes. But I'm also doing the right thing by helping to rescue Melody and expose your criminal organization. Ashley, can you describe the conditions that Melody was living in at the Montana facility? She was kept in a basement room that was maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. There was a small bed, a toilet, and a sink. She was given one meal a day and occasionally some books or magazines to read. That's not true. She had a full apartment with multiple rooms and all the amenities she needed. We spared no expense in making sure she was comfortable during her stay. Wendy, I saw the room myself hundreds of times. It was a prison cell with concrete walls and a locked metal door. There were no amenities except the bare minimum needed to keep someone alive.
The facility was being renovated. Of course, it wasn't luxurious yet. We were gradually improving the accommodations as time and resources allowed.
Renovated for 3 years? Lance, you installed heavier locks and more security cameras during that time. The only renovations were to make it harder for her to escape. Melody, we want to hear your side of this story. Can you tell our viewers what really happened 3 years ago? Thank you, Jennifer. It's quite surreal to be sitting across from people who are supposed to be my family, listening to them lie about the worst experience of my life. Oh, please, spare us the dramatics. You disappear for 3 years without a word, and now you want sympathy? You probably spent the whole time in some luxury resort planning this elaborate revenge scheme. You're absolutely right, Wendy. I should have sent postcards from the basement where you had me imprisoned. I'm sure Hallmark makes cards for that occasion. Something like greetings from my kidnapping, wish you were here to face justice.
That's a serious accusation. I hope you have proof to back up such claims, because false accusations of kidnapping are serious crimes in themselves.
Oh, I have proof, Lance. More than you could possibly imagine. I have 3 years worth of evidence documenting every crime you committed, every threat you made, and every dollar you stole. Melody, before we get into the evidence, can you tell us exactly what happened on the day you disappeared? I had discovered some irregularities in the company's financial records and was planning to meet with our accountants to discuss what I had found. I was walking to my car outside my apartment building when 2 men grabbed me from behind. That's completely fabricated. You left voluntarily because you couldn't handle the pressure of family expectations and business responsibilities. The men drugged me with something that made me lose consciousness. When I woke up, I was in that basement room in Montana with Lance standing over me explaining how I was going to disappear forever if I didn't cooperate.
That's impossible. I was in meetings all day that day. I have witnesses who can confirm my whereabouts during the time you claim this happened.
Actually, Lance, you bragged about those meetings to me during one of your monthly visits. You said you had created perfect alibis for yourself by scheduling important business meetings on the same day you kidnapped me. I can confirm that Lance talked extensively about creating alibis for criminal activities. He was very proud of his planning and attention to detail when it came to covering up crimes. Ashley has no credibility. She's been turned against us by federal agents who promised her immunity if she supported their false narrative. Wendy, are you suggesting that the FBI is fabricating evidence and coercing witnesses to frame you for crimes you didn't commit? I'm suggesting that federal agents are under enormous pressure to solve high-profile cases, and sometimes they rush to judgment when they think they've found convenient scapegoats. Convenient scapegoats? Wendy, you recorded yourselves planning my murder. The FBI didn't need to fabricate anything because you documented your own crimes.
Those recordings are taken completely out of context. We were discussing theoretical scenarios and potential problems, not actual criminal plans.
Theoretical scenarios like how deep to dig a grave and what kind of acid dissolves bodies most efficiently, because those were actual topics of conversation that I witnessed and recorded. Let's take a look at some of the evidence that will be presented in court. These financial records show systematic transfers of funds from Winters Industries to shell companies controlled by Stellar Entertainment. Those could be legitimate business transactions. Companies transfer money between subsidiaries and partners all the time for perfectly legal reasons. Wendy, these companies didn't exist until after my father died. You created them specifically to steal money from his estate and my inheritance.
The companies provided real services to real clients. The fact that we happen to own them doesn't make the transactions fraudulent or illegal.
What services, Lance? What clients? I have the complete business records for all of these shell companies, and they never provided any services or had any real clients except for yourselves using false identities. Melody, how did you manage to gather all this evidence while being held prisoner? During my captivity, I had access to basic internet through an old computer that Lance thought was broken. I was able to secretly contact some of my father's old business associates and begin investigating the financial crimes. That's impossible. The facility had no internet access. We made sure all communications were completely cut off to prevent exactly that kind of situation. Actually, Wendy, there was internet access in the guard station, and the computer Lance thought was broken was actually functional. I helped Melody access it during the last 6 months of her imprisonment.
Ashley, you're admitting to helping a prisoner escape. That makes you an accessory to whatever crime she committed during her time away from the facility.
The only crime here was holding her prisoner in the first place. Helping someone escape from kidnapping isn't a crime, Lance. It's called rescue. Melody, once you had internet access, how did you begin building Phoenix Global Industries? My father had introduced me to several international business leaders over the years. When I contacted them and explained my situation, they were horrified and immediately offered to help me build a case against Wendy and Lance. International business leaders don't get involved in family disputes. You're making this all up to sound more credible and sophisticated than you really are. These weren't just business leaders, Wendy. They were my father's closest friends who had watched him build his company and who were disgusted to learn how you and Lance had dishonored his memory through theft and violence.
Even if that's true, it doesn't prove we did anything wrong. Rich people help each other all the time. That doesn't make them heroes or us criminals.
They helped me because they believed in justice and because they had the resources to investigate crimes that local authorities might not have been able to handle due to your political connections and financial influence. Lance and Wendy had connections with several local politicians and law enforcement officials who had been taking payments in exchange for ignoring suspicious activities related to Stellar Entertainment. Ashley, are you saying that there was official corruption involved in covering up these crimes? I witnessed Lance making payments to the county sheriff, 2 state legislators, and a federal prosecutor who is supposed to be investigating financial crimes in our region. That's completely false. Those were legitimate consulting fees and campaign contributions. We had every right to support political candidates who understood business needs. Consulting fees. For what services? Campaign contributions to candidates who weren't even running for election? Lance specifically told me these payments were to keep law enforcement from investigating Melody's disappearance.
Ashley is lying. Those payments were for legitimate business, consulting, and political support. There's nothing illegal about hiring former officials as advisors.
Former officials? Lance, you were paying people who were still in office. You were bribing active law enforcement officers and prosecutors to ignore your crimes. Mrs. Winters, thank you for being here. Let's start with a simple question. Where did you think your stepdaughter was for the past 3 years? I assumed she was gallivanting around Europe, spending money frivolously as young heiresses tend to do. She was always dramatic and irresponsible, constantly creating problems and demanding attention from everyone around her. That's interesting, because according to these financial records, Melody never touched her trust fund. In fact, not a single penny was withdrawn from any of her accounts during her absence. How do you explain that discrepancy? Those records are obviously fraudulent. Someone has manipulated the bank statements to support this ridiculous narrative. Banks make mistakes all the time, and records can be altered by people with sufficient technical knowledge and criminal intent. Mrs. Winters, these records come directly from the Federal Reserve and have been verified by 3 independent auditing firms. Are you suggesting that the Federal Reserve is participating in a conspiracy against you? I'm suggesting that when you have unlimited resources, you can buy any documentation you want. Melody obviously hired experts to create false financial records to support her version of events.
That's impossible. Show me those documents. I want to examine them myself and verify their authenticity before we accept them as evidence of anything.
Mr. Winters, we'll get to your involvement shortly. But first, I want to follow up on something your stepmother just said. If Melody was supposedly spending money frivolously in Europe, how did she manage to build a billion-dollar corporation?
She didn't. This Phoenix Global nonsense is all an elaborate fraud designed to make her look successful and us look criminal. No one built a billion-dollar company in 3 years, especially not a young woman with no real business experience.
That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Winters. Phoenix Global Industries is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange and has been thoroughly vetted by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Are you claiming that the SEC is also part of this conspiracy?
I'm claiming that regulatory agencies can be fooled by sophisticated financial manipulation and false documentation. When you have enough money and the right connections, you can create the appearance of legitimacy for almost any business venture.
What connections are you referring to? Because according to our investigation, Phoenix Global was built through legitimate acquisitions and strategic partnerships with some of the most respected companies in the world. Respected companies that were probably paid enormous sums to participate in this charade. Corporate executives will do anything for money, and Melody obviously had access to resources that we can't even imagine. What resources would those be, Mrs. Winters? You just told us that Melody never accessed her trust fund or any of her bank accounts. Where would she get the money to pay for this supposed conspiracy? She obviously had hidden accounts that we didn't know about. Rich families always have secret money stashed away in offshore banks and foreign investments that don't show up on regular financial statements. Are you referring to the offshore accounts that you and your son used to hide the money you stole from Winters Industries? Because those are the only hidden offshore accounts that our investigation has uncovered.
We never had any offshore accounts. All of our financial transactions were completely transparent and properly documented through legitimate banking institutions.
Lance, I helped you set up accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. I have copies of the banking documents and transaction records. You can't deny what I witnessed personally.
Ashley, you're confused about the nature of those accounts. They were legitimate business investments designed to diversify our portfolio and protect assets from economic instability.
Protected assets? Lance, you were hiding stolen money. You specifically told me that these accounts existed to keep money away from auditors and investigators who might ask uncomfortable questions. Ashley is obviously being coached by federal agents who are feeding her false memories and convincing her that legal business activities were somehow criminal. This is a classic example of witness manipulation. Witness manipulation? Wendy, I was there. I saw the documents. I watched Lance transfer millions of dollars to accounts under fake names. I helped him create false business records to justify the transactions. Ashley, can you be more specific about what you witnessed during your time working for the Winters family? Over the course of 18 months, I watched Lance and Wendy systematically steal approximately $15 million from Winters Industries and transfer it to accounts they controlled through shell companies with fake business addresses. $15 million? That's completely absurd. Our company's total revenue for the past 3 years wasn't even close to that amount. She's obviously exaggerating to make her testimony sound more dramatic. Wendy, I'm not talking about Stellar Entertainment's revenue. I'm talking about money stolen from Winters Industries, which was Melody's father's original company that you and Lance looted after his death.
Winters Industries was failing when Dad died. We had to take extraordinary measures to preserve what value remained and prevent total collapse that would have hurt everyone involved.
Lance, Winters Industries was completely healthy when Dad died. I have the real financial records that he kept in a safety deposit box that you didn't know existed. The company was profitable and growing. There's no safety deposit box. We went through all of your father's papers and financial records after he died. We would have found any additional accounts or investments. You went through the papers he kept at home and in his office. You didn't know about the box he rented under his mother's maiden name specifically because he suspected that someone was stealing from the company.
That's impossible. Dad trusted us completely. He never suspected us of anything wrong. If he had concerns about theft, he would have confronted us directly.
He was planning to confront you the week after he died. His calendar shows a meeting scheduled with you, Wendy, the company's legal team, and 2 FBI financial crimes investigators. That explains why Lance and Wendy moved so quickly to take control of company assets immediately after the funeral. They knew they were running out of time before the investigation began. We took control because we were the experienced adults. Melody was barely out of college and had no idea how to run a multi-million-dollar corporation during a period of economic uncertainty. I was 24 years old with a master's degree in business administration from Harvard, and I had been working at the company for 3 years. I wasn't some naive child who needed protection from corporate responsibility. Melody, can you tell us about your father's suspicions regarding the theft from his company? About 6 months before he died, Dad started noticing discrepancies in the financial reports. He hired a private investigator to look into the irregularities and was building a case against Wendy and Lance.
A private investigator? That's the first I've heard of any investigation. If Dad had hired someone to look into company finances, we would have been informed as senior executives.
You weren't informed because you were the targets of the investigation. The private investigator documented evidence of embezzlement going back almost 2 years before Dad's death. Where's this supposed evidence? If your father had proof of wrongdoing, why didn't he take action while he was alive? He was taking action. He was building an airtight case to present to law enforcement and company shareholders. Unfortunately, he died before he could complete the investigation and file charges. Lance told me that they were relieved when Melody's father died because it prevented him from exposing their theft. Lance said they got lucky with the timing of his death.
I never said anything like that. Ashley is fabricating conversations to support the prosecution's case. She's been promised immunity and probably money in exchange for her false testimony.
Lance, you said it multiple times. You and Wendy both talked about how convenient it was that Melody's father died when he did, before he could cause problems for your business arrangements. Ashley, are you suggesting that Lance and Wendy were somehow involved in Melody's father's death? I don't have direct evidence of that, but they certainly benefited enormously from the timing. And they made comments that suggested they weren't entirely surprised when he passed away suddenly. That's a monstrous accusation. We loved Melody's father. His death was a tragedy that devastated our entire family. How dare you suggest that we would harm someone we cared about? You loved my father? Wendy, you married him for his money and started stealing from him within 6 months of the wedding. That's not love. That's calculated exploitation.
Dad was happy with Wendy. Their marriage was strong and loving. You never accepted her as part of the family because you were jealous of losing your position as the most important woman in his life.
My father confided in me about problems in his marriage. He knew that Wendy was only interested in his wealth, and he was planning to file for divorce after he completed the investigation into the missing money. That's completely false. Your father never mentioned divorce. Our marriage was solid and committed. You're making up stories to paint me as a gold digger and opportunist. I have copies of the divorce papers he was preparing. His lawyer gave them to me after Dad died. Wendy, you were about to lose everything when Dad discovered your theft, so you had to find another way to secure access to the family assets. Melody, are you suggesting that your stepmother and stepbrother planned your kidnapping as a way to prevent you from inheriting your father's estate? That's exactly what I'm suggesting. With Dad dead and me out of the picture, they had complete control of all the family assets and could continue stealing without anyone in a position to stop them.
That's paranoid conspiracy thinking. We had legitimate authority as senior family members and company executives. We didn't need to kidnap anyone to maintain our positions.
Lance, you specifically told me that Melody needed to disappear permanently because she was asking too many questions about missing money and could expose your theft if she remained free. Ashley is obviously lying. She's being paid by Melody's lawyers to fabricate testimony that supports their version of events. This whole thing is an elaborate frame job designed to destroy our reputations. Mrs. Winters, how do you explain the physical evidence found at the Montana facility? The FBI discovered a basement prison with reinforced doors, security cameras, and living conditions consistent with long-term imprisonment. That facility was designed as a secure retreat for high-value clients who needed privacy and protection. Many wealthy individuals require specialized security arrangements when they want to get away from public attention. High-value clients who needed to be locked in basement rooms with no means of communication with the outside world? That seems like an unusual business model for a retreat facility. The security was necessary to protect guests from media attention and potential threats from people who might want to harm or exploit them. Privacy is a luxury that requires extreme measures in today's world. Wendy, the only guest at that facility, was Melody, and she was there against her will. There were no other clients, no luxury amenities, and no services provided except imprisonment and threats.
Ashley has no perspective on the broader business operations. She was only responsible for basic property maintenance, not client services or security management.
Basic property maintenance? Lance, you had me delivering meals to Melody and monitoring her activities to make sure she didn't escape. That's not maintenance. That's participating in kidnapping. Let's take a look at some of the security footage from the Montana facility. What you're seeing now is video evidence from inside the compound where Melody was held. This could be fake. Anyone can manipulate video footage these days with computer technology. This so-called evidence could have been created in a studio somewhere by professional film editors. Mrs. Winters, the FBI's digital forensics team has verified the authenticity of this footage using multiple technical analyses. The metadata, compression artifacts, and timing signatures all confirm that these recordings are genuine. FBI digital forensics teams can be wrong. Technology experts make mistakes all the time when they're analyzing complex data. Just because they claim something is authentic doesn't mean it actually happened. Wendy, that's me in the video wearing the same clothes I was kidnapped in 3 years ago. Unless you think I traveled back in time to create fake footage, this is pretty solid evidence of my imprisonment.
You could have recreated the scene recently. You could have built a replica of the facility and filmed yourself there to support your false accusations.
Lance, the timestamp on this footage shows dates throughout the 3 years I was missing. Are you suggesting that I built a time machine in addition to staging an elaborate kidnapping hoax? The timestamp data has been verified by independent experts and matches communication records, weather patterns, and other external data sources from the corresponding time periods. Independent experts who are probably paid by Melody to provide false verification. When you have unlimited money, you can buy any expert opinion you want. Wendy, I was there when this footage was recorded. I saw Melody in that basement room hundreds of times over 18 months. You can't fake my personal testimony about events I witnessed directly.
Your personal testimony isn't reliable because you've been compromised by federal agents who convinced you to betray the people who trusted and employed you.
Betrayed? Lance, you and Wendy betrayed your own family by kidnapping Melody and stealing her inheritance. I'm not betraying anyone. I'm helping to expose criminals and rescue their victim. Mr. Winters, we'll get to your involvement shortly. But first, let's welcome the woman at the center of this story. Ladies and gentlemen, Melody Winters. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. It's quite surreal to be sitting across from people who are supposed to be my family. Oh, please, spare us the dramatics. You disappear for 3 years without a word, and now you want sympathy? You're absolutely right, Wendy. I should have sent postcards from the basement where you had me imprisoned.
That's a serious accusation. I hope you have proof to back up such claims.
Oh, I have proof, Lance. More than you could possibly imagine. But let's start with something simple. Jennifer, could you show them the photographs? These images were taken at a remote facility in Montana, purchased under a shell company traced back to Stellar Entertainment. The property was raided last month by federal authorities. I have no knowledge of any property in Montana. Our company owns hundreds of assets. I can't be expected to know every single one. Really? You personally signed the purchase agreement. I have a copy of your signature right here. Unless you're claiming someone forged your handwriting?
This is incredible television. The ratings are going through the roof. Should I zoom in on Mrs. Winters' face? She's turning an interesting shade of green. This is better than any soap opera I've ever filmed.
Mr. Thompson, please keep your commentary to yourself. This is live television, and we need to maintain professional standards during this serious broadcast.
Sorry, but seriously, this is the most dramatic television I've ever been part of. The tension in this room is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mrs. Winters looks like she's about to have a nervous breakdown.
I can't hear you, you know. Your unprofessional comments are being broadcast to millions of viewers. When my lawyers get finished with this network, you'll all be looking for new jobs.
Your lawyers? Ma'am, didn't we already establish that your lawyers quit when they found out about the frozen assets and criminal charges? I think you might be representing yourself at this point.
I have connections throughout the legal community. There are plenty of attorneys who would be honored to represent someone of my stature and reputation in the business world.
Stature and reputation? Ma'am, after tonight's broadcast, your stature is going to be measured in prison uniforms and your reputation is going to be that of a kidnapper and thief. I'm not sure that's the kind of case most lawyers want to take on. This is completely inappropriate. We came here in good faith to participate in what we thought was a legitimate news interview, not a public execution disguised as journalism. Public execution? Sir, if you didn't want your crimes exposed on television, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to appear on a television show specifically designed to expose crimes. That seems like a pretty obvious tactical error. We were told this would be an opportunity to present our side of the story and respond to false accusations. We weren't told that we would be ambushed with fabricated evidence and coached witnesses. Fabricated evidence, like the security footage of you kidnapping your sister? Coached witnesses like the girlfriend you trusted with all your criminal secrets? Sir, I think your definition of fabricated might be different from everyone else's.
This entire broadcast is a carefully orchestrated character assassination designed to destroy our reputations and steal our life's work. When the truth comes out, everyone involved in this conspiracy will face serious consequences.
The truth is coming out, ma'am. That's literally what's happening right now. We're revealing the truth about what you did to your family and how you stole millions of dollars. The consequences are for you, not for us.
Mr. Thompson, while your observations are colorful, we need to focus on the serious nature of tonight's revelations. This isn't entertainment. This is justice being served.
You're absolutely right, Ms. Walsh. I apologize for treating this like entertainment when it's really about a young woman who suffered terribly at the hands of people who were supposed to protect her.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. This has been the most difficult experience of my life, and I appreciate everyone who has helped bring the truth to light. Melody, your courage in speaking out tonight is inspiring. A lot of people wouldn't have the strength to face their abusers on live television and tell the world what really happened.
Abusers? That's a very strong word for people who were trying to help someone through a difficult period in their life. We were providing Melody with support and protection during a challenging time.
Support and protection? Lance, you held her prisoner for 3 years. You threatened to kill her if she tried to escape. You stole her inheritance and planned to murder her to cover up your crimes. How is any of that support or protection?
The situation was complex and required careful management. Sometimes helping someone means making difficult decisions that they might not understand or appreciate at the time.
Difficult decisions like where to bury her body after you killed her? Because that's the kind of help you were planning to provide during my last months at the facility. Ashley is exaggerating everything to make her testimony sound more dramatic and convincing. She's been coached by federal agents who need sensational stories to justify their investigation. I don't need to exaggerate anything, Wendy. The truth is dramatic enough. You and Lance committed horrible crimes against an innocent person, and now you're trying to escape responsibility by claiming everyone else is lying. Let's take a moment to review some of the financial evidence that will be presented in court. These documents show a pattern of theft that began within months of Melody's father's death and continued until her escape. Those documents are incomplete and taken out of context. Complex business transactions can't be understood without complete information about the economic circumstances and industry conditions. Mrs. Winters, these documents have been reviewed by forensic accountants, FBI financial crimes investigators, and independent auditing firms. They all reached the same conclusion about systematic embezzlement. Forensic accountants and FBI investigators can be wrong. They often make mistakes when they're analyzing complex corporate structures and international business arrangements. Wendy, there's nothing complex about transferring money from my father's company to accounts you controlled under false names. That's simple theft, and the evidence is overwhelming.
The evidence shows legitimate business transactions between related companies. There's nothing illegal about moving money between corporate entities for valid business purposes.
Valid business purposes like funding your luxury lifestyle while I was locked in a basement? Lance, I have records of every dollar you stole and every lie you told to justify the theft. Melody, can you give our viewers some specific examples of how the stolen money was used? They purchased a yacht worth $3 million, a vacation home in the Bahamas, luxury cars, jewelry, and artwork. All of this was paid for with money stolen from my father's company. Those were legitimate business expenses and investments. Successful executives need certain lifestyle amenities to maintain their professional credibility and client relationships. Business expenses? Wendy, you bought a diamond necklace worth $200,000 as a business expense? What business purpose did that serve? Professional networking often requires attending high-end social events where appropriate attire and accessories are essential for maintaining credibility and establishing important business relationships. I was with Wendy when she bought that necklace. She specifically said it was a reward for herself for successfully stealing Melody's inheritance without getting caught by law enforcement. Ashley is lying. I never said anything like that. She's fabricating conversations to support the prosecution's narrative and make me look guilty of crimes I didn't commit. Wendy, I recorded that conversation on my phone. I have audio of you bragging about stealing money and celebrating the fact that you thought you had gotten away with it.
Ashley, you recorded private conversations without consent. That's illegal in most states. Those recordings can't be used as evidence because they were obtained through criminal activity.
Lance, I was protecting myself. When I realized that you and Wendy were planning to commit murder, I started recording conversations as insurance in case you decided to kill me too. Ashley, were you concerned about your own safety during your time at the facility? Absolutely. Once I understood what Lance and Wendy were really doing, I became terrified that they would eliminate me as a witness. I started documenting everything as protection.
You were never in any danger. We trusted you completely and treated you as a valued member of our organization. Your paranoia and fear were completely unfounded.
Unfounded? Lance, you, and Wendy discussed killing me at least a dozen times. You said I knew too much and couldn't be trusted to keep quiet if law enforcement ever started investigating. We never discussed killing anyone. Ashley is fabricating these conversations to make herself look like a victim instead of the willing accomplice that she actually was. Willing accomplice? I thought I was helping to manage a family property. I didn't know I was participating in kidnapping and theft until months into my employment.
You knew exactly what was happening from the beginning. You were paid generous compensation specifically because you understood the sensitive nature of the situation.
The sensitive nature? Is that what you call holding someone prisoner and planning their murder? Because I thought sensitivity involved being considerate of other people's feelings, not imprisoning and threatening them. We need to pause for a commercial break. When we return, we'll hear more shocking revelations from this incredible story of survival and justice. Don't go anywhere.
And we're clear. Folks, this is absolutely insane. I've been filming television for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. These people are confessing to serious crimes on live television.
Turn off those cameras right now. I demand to speak to your producer and the network executives. This ambush journalism is completely unacceptable.
Ma'am, this is live television. There's no turning off anything at this point. The cat is out of the bag, as they say. Millions of people are watching you confess to kidnapping and embezzlement. We haven't confessed to anything. We're trying to explain a complex situation to people who don't understand the business and family dynamics involved. Sir, when you admit to holding someone prisoner and stealing their money, that's generally considered a confession in most legal jurisdictions. The business dynamics don't really change the criminal nature of the activities.
We were protecting family assets and helping a troubled young woman through a difficult period in her life. Everything we did was motivated by love and concern for family welfare.
Love and concern that involve digging graves and acquiring poison? Ma'am, I think your definition of family love is very different from what most people would consider normal or healthy.
Normal families don't lock each other in basements for 3 years. Normal families don't threaten to kill each other over money. What Lance and Wendy did was evil, not loving.
Ashley, we need to talk privately. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain the situation without all these cameras and microphones recording everything we say.
There's nothing to explain, Lance. I heard you planning to murder someone. I saw you steal millions of dollars. I watched you torture an innocent person for 3 years. What explanation could possibly make any of that acceptable?
You don't understand the full context. There were business pressures and family obligations that created impossible situations requiring extraordinary measures to protect everyone's interests.
Everyone's interests? Lance, the only interests you were protecting were your own financial interests. Melody's interests would have been better served by not being kidnapped and threatened with death. Lance, do you remember when we were kids and you used to have nightmares about monsters under your bed? I would sneak into your room and read you stories until you fell asleep.
Melody, please don't bring up childhood memories. That has nothing to do with the current situation and the complex business decisions that adults sometimes have to make.
It has everything to do with the current situation, Lance. I thought we were family. I thought you cared about me. I never imagined that you would become the monster that children have nightmares about.
I'm not a monster. I'm a businessman who made difficult decisions under extreme circumstances. Everything I did was to preserve the family legacy and protect what Dad built.
Dad built a company based on honesty and integrity. You destroyed that legacy when you decided to steal money and commit violence. You didn't preserve anything. You corrupted everything he stood for. Melody's father would be heartbroken to know what his son and wife did to his daughter. He trusted them to take care of his family and his business, and they betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. You didn't know Melody's father. You have no idea what he would think or feel about these circumstances. He understood the challenges of running a business and making tough decisions. Tough decisions? Wendy, kidnapping isn't a tough business decision. Murder isn't a legitimate corporate strategy. You're talking about serious crimes, not challenging management choices. We're back in 30 seconds. Mrs. Winters, are you feeling all right? You look quite pale, and you've been sweating profusely since the beginning of this broadcast. I want to leave. This interview is over. I refuse to participate in this character assassination any longer. This entire broadcast is a violation of our rights and dignity. I'm afraid you can't leave just yet, Mrs. Winters. The FBI agents stationed outside the studio would like to have a word with you after we finish here. They have warrants for your arrest. Warrants? That's impossible. We haven't been charged with anything. In America, people are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, not in the court of public opinion. The warrants were issued this morning based on evidence gathered during the FBI's investigation. Your appearance on this broadcast is actually the final step in their case development.
This is entrapment. The FBI used this television appearance to trick us into providing evidence against ourselves. That's illegal and unethical law enforcement conduct.
Entrapment? Lance, the FBI didn't force you to commit crimes or confess to them on television. You chose to appear on this broadcast, and you chose to admit to kidnapping and theft.
We were told this would be an opportunity to defend ourselves against false accusations. We were lied to about the purpose and nature of this interview.
Mr. Winters, you were invited to appear on a broadcast about your stepsister's disappearance and return. Everything that has been discussed tonight is directly related to that topic. No one lied to you about the subject matter. Mr. Thompson, please keep your commentary to yourself. This is live television.
Sorry, but seriously, this is better than a soap opera. Even if this property exists, that doesn't prove anything. Melody could have been anywhere. She could have been living it up in Paris, for all we know.
Lance, do you remember the scar on your left hand? The one you got when you were 12 after you fell off your bicycle?
What does that have to do with anything?
You used to scratch at it when you were nervous. You're doing it right now. You always did that when you were lying to our father. Melody, can you tell us exactly what happened 3 years ago? I discovered that Wendy and Lance were embezzling money from my father's company. They had been siphoning funds for years, using fake contracts and shell companies. When I confronted them, they gave me an ultimatum: stay quiet or disappear permanently. This is completely fabricated. We would never do such a thing. I have recordings, Wendy. Everything. Including the conversation where you discussed the best way to make me disappear without arousing suspicion.
You're bluffing. If you had recordings, the authorities would have arrested us already.
Who says they haven't? The FBI is quite patient when building a solid case. They prefer to gather all the evidence before making arrests.
Oh snap. This is like watching a house of cards collapse in real time.
Mr. Thompson, please. Melody, you mentioned that you're now the owner of Phoenix Global Industries. How did that happen? During my captivity, I had a lot of time to think and plan. I managed to get word to some business contacts my father had introduced me to years earlier. They helped me acquire Phoenix Global through a series of strategic investments and acquisitions. You expect us to believe that you built a business empire while being held prisoner? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Not while I was imprisoned, Wendy. After I escaped, you really should have invested in better security for that Montana facility.
This is all very entertaining, but where's your proof? Anyone can make wild accusations on television.
Jennifer, could you please show our viewers the security footage from the Montana facility? Absolutely. What you're seeing now is footage from inside the compound where Melody was held. The timestamp shows dates from 3 years ago up until 6 months ago when she escaped. This could be fake. Anyone can manipulate video footage these days. The FBI's digital forensics team verified its authenticity. They're quite thorough when it comes to evidence in federal cases. Melody, how did you escape? Lance made a mistake. He hired his girlfriend, Ashley, to help run the facility. She wasn't as committed to the cause as he thought.
Ashley would never betray me. We're getting married next month.
Actually, Lance, Ashley has been working with the FBI for the past 8 months. She's been gathering evidence and recording conversations. I believe she's the one who provided the authorities with the financial records showing your embezzlement.
This guy's face just went from green to purple. Should I call a medic?
Hi, Lance. Surprise.
Ashley, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at your sister's house.
I've been helping the FBI build their case against you and your stepmother. I'm sorry, Lance, but what you did to Melody was unforgivable. You little traitor. We trusted you. You trusted me to help you keep an innocent woman prisoner. That's not trust. That's complicity in a crime. Ashley, thank you for joining us. Can you tell our viewers what you witnessed during your time at the Montana facility? Melody was kept in a basement room with minimal food and no contact with the outside world. Lance and Wendy visited monthly to remind her that she would never be found if she tried to escape.
Ashley, please don't do this. Think about our future together. Think about the plans we made.
The only plan I care about now is making sure justice is served. I have recordings of every conversation you had about Melody, every threat, every cruel joke about her situation. Ashley risked her life to help me escape. She's the hero in this story, not me. This is a conspiracy. You've all planned this together to destroy our reputation and steal our company. Wendy, Stellar Entertainment was built with money stolen from my father's company. It was never yours to begin with. The FBI has traced every fraudulent transaction. We have documents here showing that Phoenix Global Industries has filed a lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. Is that correct? Yes, and we're also pressing criminal charges for kidnapping, false imprisonment, embezzlement, and fraud. The evidence is overwhelming.
You can't prove we kidnapped you. You could have gone there voluntarily.
Lance, there are security cameras showing you and two other men dragging me unconscious into a van outside my apartment building. The FBI has that footage too.
This is the best television I've ever filmed. It's like a real-life thriller movie.
Even if all of this is true, you'll never be able to prove we were behind it. We have the best lawyers money can buy. Actually, your lawyers quit yesterday after the FBI froze all of your assets. Turns out they don't like working for free. Melody, what was the most difficult part of your ordeal? The isolation was terrible, but the worst part was knowing that people who were supposed to love me could be so cruel. I kept thinking about my father and how disappointed he would be. Your father spoiled you rotten. He gave you everything, and you still weren't grateful. My father gave me love and guidance. You gave me trauma and nightmares. There's a difference.
Look, maybe things got out of hand, but we never meant for it to go on so long. We were going to let you go eventually.
That's not what you told me, Lance. You said she would never leave Montana alive.
Ashley, you're taking my words out of context.
I recorded our conversations, Lance. There's no context that makes threatening to kill someone sound reasonable. Speaking of recordings, Melody, you mentioned earlier that you have audio evidence. Can our viewers hear some of that? I think the audience should hear exactly what kind of people they're dealing with. Play recording number 7, please. She's becoming too much trouble. Maybe it's time we considered a permanent solution. Make it look like an accident.
I know someone who can handle that kind of problem. It won't be cheap, but it would solve everything.
That recording is taken completely out of context. We were discussing a movie script. A movie script? Really, Wendy? Is that your defense?
Yes, we were working on a thriller screenplay. Ashley can confirm that.
Lance, stop lying. I was there during that conversation. You were planning to have Melody killed. We need to pause for a commercial break. When we return, we'll hear more shocking revelations from this incredible story. Don't go anywhere.
And we're clear, this is absolutely insane. You people are better than any reality show.
Turn off those cameras right now.
I demand to speak to your producer.
Ma'am, this is live television. There's no turning off anything. You agreed to be here. Ashley, we need to talk privately. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain.
There's nothing to explain, Lance.
I heard you planning to murder someone. That's pretty clear cut. Lance, do you remember when we were kids and you used to have nightmares? I would sneak into your room and read you stories until you fell asleep.
Melody, please don't.
I thought we were family.
I thought you cared about me.
How could you do this?
Things changed after Dad died. The will, the inheritance, everything became so complicated.
Shut up, Lance. Don't say another word. We're back in 30 seconds. Mrs. Winters, are you feeling all right? You look quite pale. I want to leave. This interview is over. I'm afraid you can't leave just yet. The FBI would like to have a word with you after we finish here.
And we're live again in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the most explosive broadcast in television history.
Welcome back to this shocking exposé. Before the break, we heard audio evidence of a conversation between Wendy and Lance Winters discussing what they called a permanent solution to their problem with Melody. Now, let's hear more evidence that will be presented in their criminal trial. That wasn't the only conversation, Jennifer. Over the 3 years I was held captive, they recorded themselves numerous times discussing my fate. I believe they were planning to use those recordings to blackmail each other if their partnership ever fell apart. You're twisting everything. Those conversations were hypothetical discussions about worst-case scenarios that we hoped would never actually occur. Business leaders often engage in contingency planning that involves extreme possibilities. Hypothetical? Wendy, you hired someone to dig a grave in the Montana property. The FBI found it last month. It's a little hard to explain away a grave as hypothetical planning or legitimate business contingency preparation.
We never hired anyone to dig anything inappropriate. That excavation was part of a legitimate property development project that we were considering for potential future construction or landscaping improvements.
Lance, I watched you pay the man yourself. I have photos of the transaction, copies of the check, and recordings of your conversation where you specifically told him to dig a grave large enough for an adult human body. Ashley is fabricating evidence to support her false testimony. She's been working with federal agents to create documentation that supports their predetermined narrative about our supposed criminal activities. I don't need to fabricate anything, Wendy. I documented your actual crimes as they happened. The evidence is real because the crimes were real, and I was there when they occurred. Ashley, how long were you gathering evidence before you contacted the authorities? About 8 months after I started working at the facility. At first, I thought Melody was there voluntarily, maybe for her own protection or because she was having personal problems and needed space to recover. Ashley saved my life. If she hadn't helped me escape and hadn't gathered evidence of their crimes, I would never have made it out of Montana alive. They were getting more desperate and more dangerous as time went on. This is all very touching, but where's your proof that we embezzled money? Anyone can make accusations and create false documentation, especially when they have unlimited resources and sophisticated technical assistance. Jennifer, could you show the financial documents on screen? I think our viewers deserve to see exactly how systematic and extensive their theft really was. These records show systematic transfers of funds from Winters Industries to various shell companies, all controlled by Stellar Entertainment. The pattern goes back 5 years, starting just after Melody's father passed away unexpectedly.
Those could be legitimate business transactions between related corporate entities. Dad had business dealings with lots of companies, and many of those relationships continued after his death as part of normal operations.
Lance, these companies didn't exist until after Dad died. You created them specifically to hide the stolen money and make the theft appear legitimate to anyone who might investigate the financial irregularities. Even if that were true, you can't prove we knew about the specific details of these transactions. Our accountants and financial advisors handle all the complex corporate structures and international business arrangements. Your accountants? You mean the ones who have already confessed to their participation in the embezzlement scheme and agreed to testify against you in exchange for reduced sentences and cooperation agreements with prosecutors? Melody, how did you discover the embezzlement in the first place? What led you to investigate your family's financial activities? I was going through Dad's files about a week before I disappeared because I wanted to understand the family business better and maybe take on more responsibility. I noticed some discrepancies in the accounts that didn't make sense.
You had no business going through Dad's private files without permission. Those documents contained confidential information that required specialized knowledge and experience to understand properly.
I was an equal heir to the estate, Lance. I had every right to understand the family business and the financial structures that my father had established. I wasn't doing anything wrong by educating myself about my inheritance. You were a child. You didn't understand complex financial structures and international business arrangements. Your inexperience and naivety led you to misinterpret normal business transactions as something sinister. I had a degree in business administration from Harvard, Wendy. I also had 3 years of experience working directly with Dad on various projects. I wasn't exactly financially illiterate or unfamiliar with corporate operations. Even if Melody had been inexperienced, that wouldn't justify kidnapping her and holding her prisoner for 3 years. There are legal ways to resolve family business disputes without resorting to violence and theft.
We weren't resorting to violence. We were trying to protect family assets and preserve business relationships during a difficult transition period following Dad's unexpected death.
Protecting family assets by stealing them? Preserving business relationships by committing fraud? Lance, your logic doesn't make sense to anyone who understands the difference between legal and illegal business practices. Ashley, when you first arrived at the Montana facility, what were you told about Melody's situation? Lance told me that Melody was staying there voluntarily because she was having emotional problems related to her father's death and needed a safe, private place to recover without media attention or public scrutiny. That's exactly what was happening. Melody was emotionally unstable and needed professional help in a secure environment where she could heal without interference from people who might exploit her vulnerability. There were no medical professionals at the facility, Wendy. There was no therapy or counseling or any kind of treatment. There was just Lance visiting once a month to threaten Melody and make sure she was still too scared to try to escape.
We were protecting her privacy. Mental health treatment is very personal and confidential, and we wanted to make sure she could recover without public scrutiny or media interference that might damage her reputation.
Lance, she was locked in a room with bars on the windows and armed guards outside the door. That's not mental health treatment. That's imprisonment. And you know it because you're the one who designed and implemented the security measures. Ashley, what made you finally realize the truth about what was happening at the facility? I overheard a phone conversation between Lance and Wendy where they were discussing how long they could keep Melody imprisoned without anyone getting suspicious. Lance said they might need to consider a permanent solution if she continued to cause problems. You misunderstood that conversation. We were discussing long-term care options for someone with serious mental health issues who needed extended treatment and supervision. Sometimes people require months or even years of intensive care. Extended treatment that includes discussions about digging graves and making deaths look accidental? I know what I heard, and I know what it meant because Lance explained the details to me later when he thought he could trust me.
Ashley, you're taking isolated comments completely out of context and creating a false narrative. People say things when they're frustrated or stressed that they don't really mean or intend to act upon.
For 8 months, Lance. You discussed killing your stepsister for 8 months. That's not frustration talking. That's premeditated murder planning. I have hours of recordings documenting your conversations and planning sessions. Wendy, how do you respond to these accusations from someone who is intimately involved in your operations and witnessed your behavior firsthand over an extended period? Ashley is a disgruntled employee who's been influenced by Melody's expensive lawyers and probably offered substantial financial incentives to testify against us. She's not a reliable witness because she has obvious motivations to lie. Financial incentives? I've received nothing except protection from law enforcement and cooperation agreements that keep me from being prosecuted for the crimes I was forced to participate in. I came forward because I couldn't live with myself knowing that I had participated in kidnapping and attempted murder. You participated willingly because you were well compensated. We have records of every salary payment and bonus we gave you during your employment. You were paid generous amounts specifically because you understood the sensitive nature of the situation. I was paid to manage a property. I wasn't paid to guard a prisoner or help plan a murder. When I realized what was really happening, I stopped taking your money and started working with the FBI to gather evidence instead.
The FBI probably offered you immunity from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation. You're not a hero, Ashley. You're saving yourself from criminal charges by betraying people who trusted you with confidential information.
I am saving myself from criminal charges because I realized I was participating in serious crimes. But I'm also doing the right thing by helping to rescue Melody and expose the criminal organization that you and Wendy created. Ashley, can you describe the conditions that Melody was living in at the Montana facility in more detail? She was kept in a basement room that was maybe 10 feet by 12 feet with concrete walls and no windows except for one small opening near the ceiling that had been blocked with steel mesh and security bars. That's completely false. She had a full apartment with multiple rooms and all the modern amenities she needed. We spared no expense in making sure she was comfortable and well cared for during her stay. Wendy, I saw that room myself hundreds of times over 18 months. It was a prison cell with a concrete floor, cinder block walls, and a heavy metal door with multiple locks. There were no amenities except the bare minimum needed to keep someone alive.
The facility was being renovated and upgraded. Of course, it wasn't luxurious yet. We were gradually improving the accommodations as time and financial resources allowed for construction and improvement projects.
Renovated for 3 years? Lance, during that time you installed heavier locks, more security cameras, and additional restraint equipment. The only renovations were designed to make it harder for Melody to escape, not to improve her living conditions. Melody, we want to hear your perspective on this. Can you tell our viewers what your daily life was actually like during those 3 years of imprisonment? Thank you, Jennifer. Every day was exactly the same for 3 years. I would wake up alone in that basement room, wondering if today would be the day they finally decided to kill me. I had no contact with the outside world and no reason to hope that anyone would ever find me. You're being overly dramatic to gain sympathy from the audience. You had books to read, meals delivered regularly, and comfortable accommodations. Many people would consider that a luxury vacation compared to the stresses and pressures of everyday life. A luxury vacation where I couldn't leave, where I was threatened with death if I tried to escape, where I didn't know if I would ever see sunlight again or talk to another human being who cared about me. Wendy, your definition of luxury is very different from reality.
We provided everything you needed to be comfortable and safe while we worked to resolve the family conflicts and business disputes that had created this unfortunate situation. If you had cooperated with our efforts, your circumstances would have been much more pleasant.
Cooperate with your theft? Lance, you wanted me to sign documents transferring my inheritance to shell companies that you controlled. You wanted me to participate in my own financial destruction and help you steal everything my father worked to build. Welcome back to this shocking expose. Before the break, We heard audio evidence of a conversation between Wendy and Lance Winters discussing what they called a permanent solution to their problem with Melody. That wasn't the only conversation, Jennifer. Over the 3 years I was held captive, they recorded themselves numerous times discussing my fate. I believe they were planning to use those recordings to blackmail each other if their partnership ever fell apart. You're twisting everything. Those conversations were hypothetical. Hypothetical? Wendy, you hired someone to dig a grave in the Montana property. The FBI found it last month. It's a little hard to explain away a grave as hypothetical.
We never hired anyone to dig anything.
Lance, I watched you pay the man yourself. I have photos of the transaction. Ashley, how long were you gathering evidence before you contacted the authorities? About 6 months after I started working at the facility. At first, I thought Melody was there voluntarily, maybe for her own protection. But when I realized she was being held against her will, I knew I had to do something. Ashley saved my life. If she hadn't helped me escape, I would never have made it out of Montana. This is all very touching, but where's your proof that we embezzled money? Anyone can make accusations. Jennifer, could you show the financial documents on screen? These records show systematic transfers of funds from Winters Industries to various shell companies, all controlled by Stellar Entertainment. The pattern goes back 5 years, starting just after Melody's father passed away.
Those could be legitimate business transactions. Dad had dealings with lots of companies.
Lance, these companies didn't exist until after Dad died. You created them specifically to hide the stolen money. Even if that were true, you can't prove we knew about it. Our accountants handle all the financial details. Your accountants? You mean the ones who have already confessed and agreed to testify against you in exchange for reduced sentences? Melody, how did you discover the embezzlement in the first place? I was going through Dad's files about a week before I disappeared. I noticed some discrepancies in the accounts. When I started investigating, I found evidence of the shell companies and the fraudulent contracts.
You had no business going through Dad's private files.
I was an equal heir, Lance. I had every right to understand the family business. You were a child. You didn't understand complex financial structures. I had a degree in business administration from Harvard, Wendy. I wasn't exactly financially illiterate.
This family drama is incredible. It's like watching a Shakespearean tragedy unfold in real time.
Mr. Thompson, please focus on your job. Melody, after you escaped, why didn't you go directly to the police? I needed evidence. I knew that without solid proof, it would be my word against theirs. So I used my father's old business connections to build Phoenix Global while gathering evidence. She also wanted to make sure I would be safe. If she had gone to the police immediately, Lance and Wendy might have suspected I helped her escape.
Ashley, you don't understand the bigger picture. Everything we did was to protect the family legacy.
By stealing money and holding Melody prisoner? That's your idea of protecting the family legacy? The company was failing. Your father made terrible business decisions in his final years. We had to take action to save everyone's future. The company was perfectly healthy, Wendy. I have the real financial records. The ones you didn't know Dad kept in a safety deposit box.
There's no safety deposit box. We went through all of Dad's papers after he died.
You went through the papers he kept at home and in his office. You didn't know about the box he rented under a different name. What did you find in that safety deposit box? Evidence that Wendy and Lance had been planning to steal from the company even before Dad died. He was investigating their activities when he passed away. That's impossible. Your father trusted us completely. He trusted you until he discovered you were embezzling money. These are his notes, in his own handwriting, documenting every suspicious transaction.
You're making this all up. Dad never suspected us of anything.
Lance, he was planning to confront you both the week after he died. His calendar shows a meeting scheduled with you, Wendy, and the company's legal team. That's probably why they moved so quickly to take control after he passed away. We took control because we were the adults. Melody was barely 21 and had no experience running a company. I was 24, Wendy, and I had been working at the company for 2 years already. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received word that federal agents are standing by outside the studio. They will be taking Wendy and Lance Winters into custody as soon as our program ends.
This is insane. You can't just arrest us on live television.
Actually, they can. I helped coordinate with the FBI to make sure you couldn't flee before the arrests. You little snake. I should have fired you the moment Lance brought you around. You tried to fire me, remember? But Lance convinced you to keep me because he thought I would be loyal to him. Wendy, do you have anything you want to say to our viewers before you're arrested? This is all a misunderstanding. We're innocent of any wrongdoing. Melody, what's next for you and Phoenix Global Industries? We're committed to restoring the Winters family reputation and continuing my father's philanthropic work. We're also establishing a foundation to help other victims of family-related crimes.
Melody, please. We're family. Can't we work something out privately?
Lance, family doesn't kidnap family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't threaten to murder each other. Lance, you had 3 years to make this right. Instead, you made it worse every single day.
The FBI agents are entering the studio now. This is like the finale of a crime drama series.
Melody, any final words for our audience? Never give up hope, even in the darkest circumstances. And always remember that the truth has a way of revealing itself, no matter how deeply people try to bury it. This isn't over. We'll appeal everything. We'll fight this until our last breath.
Ashley, please don't let them arrest me. I love you. We can start over somewhere else.
Lance, love doesn't involve holding innocent people prisoner. What we had wasn't love. It was manipulation. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed history tonight. A story of betrayal, survival, and ultimate justice. Thank you for joining us for this extraordinary broadcast.
And that's a wrap. Best television I've ever been part of. This is going to win awards for sure. Wendy Winters and Lance Winters, you're under arrest for kidnapping, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent.
This is a setup. We're being framed.
I want a lawyer. I'm not saying anything without a lawyer.
Goodbye, Wendy.
Goodbye, Lance.
I hope you find some peace in prison. Justice finally served. Your father would be proud of you, Melody. And that concludes the most shocking expose in television history. This has been Jennifer Walsh for Channel 7 News. Good night, America.
Cut. And that's a wrap on the most incredible live television broadcast I've ever filmed. This is going viral for sure.
Thank you all for helping me get the truth out there. Ashley, I can never repay you for what you've done. Seeing them finally held accountable is payment enough. Your father's memory has been honored tonight. Melody, would you consider doing a follow-up interview in a few months? Our viewers would love to hear how you're rebuilding your life. I'll think about it, Jennifer. Right now, I just want to focus on healing and moving forward with Phoenix Global's mission.
Ms. Winters, We'll need you to come with us to provide additional testimony, but you're free to go home whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Agent Morrison. I'll be in touch tomorrow morning. What's next for you now that this is all over? Building something positive from all this pain. Phoenix Global is going to help other families who've been torn apart by greed and betrayal.
Ms. Winters, could I get a photo with you? This is the most important story I've ever worked on.
Of course, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for capturing everything so perfectly. The phones haven't stopped ringing since we went live. This story is resonating with people across the country. Good. Maybe it will encourage other victims to come forward and seek justice. That's exactly what I hoped would happen. No one should have to suffer in silence the way I did.
The transport is ready for the suspects. Ma'am, we appreciate your cooperation in this investigation.
Will there be a trial?
With the evidence we have, including the recordings and financial documents, they'll likely accept plea bargains to avoid life sentences.
Either way, they'll face consequences for their actions. That's all I ever wanted. Melody, it's been an honor to help tell your story. You've shown incredible strength and courage. Thank you, Jennifer. This broadcast marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. A much better chapter, I hope. Definitely a better chapter. One where truth and justice prevail.
This is definitely going to be nominated for a journalism award. What a story.
Indeed it is, Mr. Thompson. Indeed it is.